dark red skies stretched out before me, a vast abyss teeming with the unspeakable horrors. I clung to the frigid railing atop of the fortification, my fingers numbed by the biting wind. It had been 63 days since the world fell into madness, 63 long and torturous days since the dead began to rise. And in those 63 days we had become the last bastion of life in this forsaken city. There were only 3 of us now, Puzzle, Krusty, and myself. We huddled together on the wall, our breath mingling with the foul stench of death that clung to the air. Our eyes strained to pierce through the impenetrable fog, searching for any sign of movement, any glimmer of life that hadn't succumbed to this plague. Below us, the abandoned fire station stood as a grim reminder of a time when sirens wailed and brave souls rushed to extinguish the flames that threatened to consume our world. Now it stood as a ruin, next to the place we had fortified with every ounce of strength we could muster. The steel cage we had painstakingly erected around the perimeter of the wall gave us a small measure of safety, a sliver of hope amidst the chaos. It was through the narrow openings in the cage that we could see them, the damned souls who had once been our friends, our families, our neighbors. Now they were twisted abominations consumed by an insatiable hunger that only the flesh of the living could satiate. Unfortunately, the living were us. Every 7th day their bloodlust intensified, an eerie cycle of savagery that defied all reason. On those nights, the world became a cacophony of anguished moans and guttural growls, a symphony of horror that echoed through the otherwise empty streets. And on those nights, we clung to our weapons, praying for the dawn to break before they breached our defenses. As the red moon hung high overhead, casting an eerie glow upon the shattered remnants of our once vibrant city, I could feel the tension in the air. The hairs on the back of my neck prickled, primal instinct warning me of the impending danger. It was almost time. Pose stood beside me, his hands trembling around his rifle. Krusty crouched on the other side, his eyes darting from shadow to shadow. We were a motley crew, brought together by circumstance, bonded by survival. Each of us carried the weight of our losses, the memories of loved ones torn away from us in a brutal twist of fate. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my nerves. My heart pounded in my chest, a drumbeat of desperation. We had made it through 62 nights, fought tooth and nail to keep the monsters at bay, but tonight felt different, heavier somehow. The air hummed with electricity, an intangible force that whispered of our impending doom. And so we waited for the onslaught that would test our mettle, our resolve. We waited for the darkness to unleash its unholy creations upon us, to challenge our very existence. But as the seconds ticked by, I couldn't help to wonder if we were already damned, trapped in a nightmare from which we could not be awakened. The city around us stood as a haunting reminder of what once was, a ghostly testament to the fragility of civilization. The streets lay deserted, littered with the debris of the remnants of the shattered lives. It was a world devoid of hope, a landscape where the living and the dead danced a macabre waltz. I tightened my grip on the cold steel of my weapon, my knuckles turning white. Tonight we would fight. Tonight we would push ourselves to the limits of human endurance. And tonight we would discover if our will to survive was enough to defy the odds, to emerge from this nightmare and find a glimmer of light in the unending darkness. Bullets whizzed through the air, tearing through decaying flesh and splattering putrid gore across the fortified wall. The night was alive with a symphony of gunfire, an orchestra of survival echoing through the desolated streets. Pose, Krusty and I fought side by side, our backs pressed against the steel cage, desperately trying to hold back the ravenous horde that surged below us. In between the hordes of relentless undead, the eerie glow of green radiated zombies pierced through the darkness. Their eyes glowed like sickly emerald flames, their skin tinged with an otherworldly luminescence. We had encountered them before, these abominations that seemed to possess an unnatural strength and resilience. They were a chilling reminder that this nightmare had taken a grotesque turn, mutating the very creature that were already doomed. With a thunderous boom, my homemade turret unleashed a hail of bullets upon the advancing mass. The makeshift contraption, cobbled together from salvaged guns in desperation, spun violently as it sprayed death into the writhing sea of the undead. The ravenous creatures fell in twisted heaps, their bodies torn apart by the relentless onslaught. I steadied my aim, squeezing the trigger of my rifle. Each shot sent a jolt through my body as I unleashed a storm of lead upon the horde. The sulfurous scent of gunpowder mingled with a stench of decay, creating a suffocating miasma that threatened to overwhelm my senses. Pose, his face etched with determination, fired methodically, his shots finding their mark with deadly precision. His eyes flickered with a mix of exhaustion and resolve, as if every pull of the trigger was fueled by a desperate need to survive, to defy the very forces that sought to consume us. But the green-radiated zombies were relentless. They surged forward with an almost preternatural resilience, their decayed limbs propelling them with an unnatural vigor. Bullets that tore through the ordinary undead seemed to barely slow them down. Their glowing eyes locked onto us, their hunger unyielding. In a moment of desperation, I turned to the turret born from salvaged weapons we had collected. With trembling hands, I reloaded it with the makeshift bullets we panically crafted just this afternoon, the metallic clinks of old barrels and one triggers merging with the chaos around us. As I mounted the contraption on the floor, Pose and Krusty continued their relentless assault, buying me precious seconds to bring the turret to life. Finally, the turret sprang to life, roaring with vengeance. A storm of bullets erupted from multiple barrels, rippling through the air in a symphony of destruction. The green-radiated zombies faltered, their bodies shuddering under the onslaught. Their glowing eyes dimmed, replaced by flickers of uncertainty and pain. We fought with a renewed vigor, fueled by a desperate need to survive against these mutated horrors. The melody of gunfire echoed through the night, punctuated by the wails of the dying and the snarls of the undead. Each pull of the trigger was a defiant act, a testament to our refusal to be consumed by the rotten darkness. And as the battle raged on, a flicker of doubt tugged at the edges of my consciousness. How long could we hold out against these monstrosities? Were we simply delaying the inevitable? The wall trembled under the attack, as if even the very structure that sheltered us was beginning to crumble. But for now, we fought. We fought with every ounce of strength we had left, our will to survive burning bright against the encroaching darkness. The night was ours, and we would fight until the very last breath, clinging to the slim hope that somewhere, somehow, salvation awaited us beyond this blood-stained horizon. The blood-soaked night finally relinquished its grip on our trembling city, and the first faint light of dawn crept over the horizon. The sun, like a weary traveler, rose cautiously, casting its gentle rays upon the battlefield littered with the fallen dead. The air hung heavy with the stench of decay, but there was an eerie calmness, a temporary respite in the wake of the relentless storm we had weathered. As the last vestiges of zombie horde twitched and convulsed, their movement slowed, their insatiable hunger finally extinguished. We approached cautiously, the click of our boots resonating against the stillness that blanketed the streets. Pose prodded the lifeless body of the final zombie with the butt of his rifle, ensuring that the nightmare had truly ended. With a collective sign of relief, we turned our attention to the fallen, to the twisted remnants of humanity scattered like broken dolls across the bloodstained pavement, their faces frozen in grotesque masks of agony and desperation. They bore the weight of a world that had devoured them, but in their death we found a morbid harvest, a glimmer of hope amidst the desolation. Gloved hands rummaged through pockets, scavenging for supplies that might aid our tenuous survival. Bullets, food, anything that could stave off the relentless grip of hunger and despair. We moved with an efficiency born of necessity, knowing that our time here was limited, that the calm would inevitably give way to the storm once more. Krusty, his gaze weary yet resolute, approached me. Together, we stood amidst the fallen, our eyes meeting briefly in a silent acknowledgement of the horrors we have faced. We were survivors, remnants of a world teetering on the edge of oblivion. And as we prepared to leave this battlefield behind, the weight of our shared burden seemed to lighten, if only for a fleeting moment. The city, once vibrant and bustling, lay broken and desolate around us. Buildings stood like hollow sentinels, their windows shattered, and their walls marred by the scars of our desperate struggle. But as we ventured back towards our makeshift fortress inside of a water preservation building, a glimmer of tranquility bathed the world in its gentle embrace. For the next 7 days, we would rest, recover, and brace ourselves for the next horde that would approach us. The streets would remain silent, the shadows less menacing, in the warm embrace of daylight. It was a temporary peace, a fragile respite, but we clung to it with a fervent hope. As we disappeared behind our steel doors, our weary bodies finding solace in the cold concrete of the walls, we We cast a final glance through the windows covered with metal pipes over the city we called home. In the distance, the sun bathed the broken skyline in hues of golden promise. It was a reminder that even in the darkest of all times, light would find a way and pierce through the gloom.